one! Inside Out 2 has been announced! And man, oh man, Pixar has not had the best reputation in recent years, but they can have the chance to redeem themselves, because unlike, say, Toy Story 5 or Frozen 3 or many other sequel ideas that modern Hollywood seems to be having nowadays, the concept of Inside Out 2 is actually a sequel idea that myself and many others actually want to see happen. Why? Because the first Inside Out had a fascinating behind-the-scenes story. If you're in any way familiar with how Pete Docter and his friends collaborated on Inside Out, they had so much ideas being shared around during production that they ultimately couldn't present all of them at once in the final product.
With all the unnecessary Pixar sequels coming out, I would love to see movies that follows Riley into adulthood. The same way the toys in Toy Story grow up with Andy, I would love to see the emotions grow up with Riley. What new developments could we relate to, and in what creative way would they show it? There's so many opportunities with this idea. In fact, if you watch the Blu-ray, you can see all the other ideas they were gonna do but couldn't because there wasn't enough time. They're all great, and I love to see more of these come about. This is a movie that not only leaves me wanting more, it leaves me wanting a lot more. Why can't this get a spin-off universe? Why can't this have other stories and other characters that can lead to other movies? To me, that's the sign of a really, really good flick.
That alone justifies the concept of Inside Out 2, because there's so much to explore with the concept that the first Inside Out film established. Just so to refresh your memory, Inside Out is my personal favorite Pixar film at the moment, and I'm not the only one who thinks that way. This is directed by Pete Docter, who also created other critically acclaimed Pixar movies like Up, and most recently, Soul.
I'm not a big fan of sequels when it comes to Disney for the most part, either from them obviously, and to some extent most of Pixar's outside of Toy Story itself. But in recent times, especially with the teaser of Inside Out 2 coming out, I've gotten to thinking otherwise. Because for the most part, Pixar hasn't been in the greatest of places recently. Being under the shadow of Disney's failures in the year of their 100th anniversary, Pixar as a studio, when they are allowed to create and properly shine under good Disney management, will always be able to succeed, at least in my opinion, if the stories are actually there. Because when Inside Out was released, it was a bit of fresh air for the studio after some of their films at the time didn't match the same level of consistency as their golden age. But I think this film specifically is giving more of a reason to actually watch it for its story and expanding the characters we already know.
Inside Out is a story about emotions in your head being personified. Have you ever read The Numbskulls and the Beano, or seen any kind of show or film or comic book where the stories artistically personify different concepts of bodily functions or the way your brain works in order to get across a certain type of story? Yeah, it would usually be comedic or to establish some lessons in abstract ways for people to understand. And definitely there is a great virtue dating back to ancient days of personifying abstract concepts in order to get certain moral points across. There is a great morality in that. And so Inside Out took that kind of concept of personifying the emotions in your head, an idea that wasn't exactly new for its time, but Pete Docter and his team took that concept to the extreme.
Because when we think of Pixar, we do think of attaching human emotions to our stories because of the if X were like Y formula, where this one really took that personally inside our own heads and the variety of personalities that makes us a human, depending on how we feel, and how a sequel and what has been seen thus far with these concepts can actually expand that even more with the basic essence that we knew. Where the production of the movie listed to utilize truthful world building, the new director Kelsey Mann used Pete Docter's 5 to 27 emotions idea from the first film he pitched to build this new world. So what this film is actually attempting to do is expanding upon the ideas originally presented for the first Inside Out film and now properly utilizing it in a way for a sequel.
Paying homage to what was in the past and also paving way for some recent discoveries in the present. And this is a very clever coming of age story, because I've heard it said by people like Animat in the past that the most complex character in this film isn't even the characters in Riley's head when you really think about it. When you really think about it, the most complex character in this film is Riley herself, because the whole concept of the film is what is going on inside someone's head. If anything, Inside Out is a glorified character study of a young girl coming of age having to confront some emotions that lead to emotional maturity. And I deeply appreciated this film, and I remember even studying this film. It was just that good at delving into emotional maturity. Looking back as an adult who's faced some life lessons, especially in this past year, I think this film is more relevant now, even back then. I mean, that's what makes it a timeless film, that timeless beauty that the film manages to tap into, that all of us, at some point in our lives, must confront our emotions and some kind of mental block in our lives in order to step out of these safety bubbles and to mature and to grow. We all have different phases of development in our lives. So if we embrace the next step, we develop, we grow, and our experience grows, we become more wholesome people as a result. So there's a higher plane of existence calling to us to step out of our bubbles of worry, step out of denial, step out of other kinds of problems we have in our life. And if we don't step out of that fishing boat to walk on the water, as it were, then we're going to face all kinds of mental blocks like anxiety, we're going to face depression and other things like that. And this film brilliantly portrays how essential joy and sadness are, and the fact that they're interlinked with each other. You need joy and sadness as a balance so that you don't deny any problems that you're confronting, but also that you have the chance to recover.
This is why Inside Out was one of my favourite films of the year, because it strikes a chord that many films aren't even brave enough to touch. Contrary to Inside Out's opening, its ending places a huge emphasis on sadness.
It's understandable why we'd want to suppress some specific emotions, but in actuality, all of our emotions are needed to grow into more wholesome people. Yes, joy is needed to enjoy life, but we also need sadness in order to empathize with other people. We need anger in order to have a sense of justice. Fear can be transformed into reverence and respect. Disgust can be turned into caution. See, all these emotions can be transformed for healthy benefits. Like, just because certain emotions are usually affiliated with negative traits doesn't mean that they always have to be. And that's what I really appreciate about this film. It's a film that celebrates the necessity for grieving, the necessity for sadness as a means of growing. I mean, I know of great men in the... Sorry. I've lost my train of thought. I'm laughing because that's actually mentioned in the Inside Out film. I mean, the film's not without some of its plot holes or inconsistencies. I mean, as clever as this abstract idea is, some people like Don Bluth and a few other professing psychologists and scientists may point out the occasional flaw or two.
A little bit of problem, which I probably shouldn't talk about. I had a little bit of problem with Inside Out. I think it's because the little girl never did anything on her own without little gremlins up in her head telling her what to feel. I'd rather say, you're in control, you decide what you want to be, you decide whether you're going to go right or left, and that's important.
But it's still quite a good story. So the concept of Inside Out 2 should be a guaranteed success, because there's actually quite a lot of potential for Inside Out. As mentioned earlier, if you look behind the scenes, then Pete Docter and his team were talking about how there were so many ideas that they had. They just couldn't present all of them at once in the final film. But now with sequels and potentially more content they could create, now they have the potential to expand on these ideas. The film makes it very clear that everyone within the conceptual film of Inside Out also has personified emotions. That was established by the end of Inside Out, if it wasn't made clear with that one scene with Riley's parents. And there was even a short film about Riley's date, which was very funny. What's great about this film is that even if there comes a point when this potential franchise of Inside Out has to move on from Riley, there could be some other characters who could have various other mental conditions to focus on. And there's a lot of potential here. There is so much potential with this concept. Like so many people have said, people want to see the personified emotions grow up with Riley the same way they saw the toys grow up with Andy. See how Riley goes through the different phases of her life and see what she has to learn, what she has to grow with. And from what we've seen of the trailer of Inside Out 2 and from the posters we've seen, it seems that there's going to be some new emotions being introduced. And the most significant one shown in the teaser trailer was an orange emotion named anxiety. Oh boy, doesn't that perfectly personify some of the phases of puberty? As well as the panic of having a reconstruction to fit in with puberty. Oh, this film is already going to be profound comedy gold. Although, this trailer is not without its concerns because, as you all well know, Disney, and by extension Pixar as well, has not had the best reputation in recent years.
So many animated movies now that range from soulless, homogenized corporate crap that might as well have been built on an assembly line.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
In regards to the plot consistencies of the film itself, if there's meant to be new emotions that show up in Riley's head, then why don't we see them in the heads of Riley's parents in the previous films? Let alone many of the other characters at the end credit sequence of Inside Out. Maybe they work in the back departments after the puberty phase is over or something? Also, I've noticed that behind the scenes, Pete Docter is retiring from his role as a director and moving on to CCO in order to manage the people at Pixar. I'm grateful that the talent that is Pete Docter is still, in some ways, in the helms of Pixar. In fact, hearing how he's getting on with being a CCO, maybe being a CCO will have its perks. Assuming that Pete Docter isn't too pressured by the higher-ups, maybe Pete Docter will have the freedom to create the best quality products that Pixar can make, and maybe Inside Out 2 will be a return to form, maybe. All I know is that a new director is being involved, and some voice actors are replacing some of the characters for this sequel. Thankfully, we still have Lewis Black as Anger, because, come on, who else could portray anger than a comedian who personifies anger? Other concerns regarding Inside Out 2? Knowing the reputation that Disney and Pixar have had recently, they're probably going to delve into some form of Marxist propaganda, most likely.
And the main reason I wanted to talk about this today is of course the new strategy going forward with Disney and their studios after the strikes has officially ended, where films like this were announced last year, and also combined with the fact that other Disney sequels were announced earlier like Toy Story, Frozen, and so forth, which has me greatly concerned. Not learning anything new from the beginning, and just adding to what they already have after everything this year is falling flat, including their own original films and remakes. This news also comes after the fact that over the course of the weeks before the actors' strike officially ended, they delayed several other films like Elio that was supposed to come out in March of 2024, and of course the horrendous Snow White remake delayed to 2025 instead, something that shows that they're not willing to learn their lessons at all right now. And although I hate the fact that we don't get to see another original Pixar film after Elemental that surprised all of us to a degree, I actually accept it for what it is, with the idea Inside Out 2 actually introduces, something that I think actually works. I mean, this film isn't out yet obviously, and I'm just talking this off the back of the teaser that's being released right now, but I just really believe in the world of Inside Out since it is one of the best Pixar films ever made in recent times.
Not everything that Pixar has made in recent years has been cringy. Pixar did create Luca, and that was quite an enjoyable film. And people have had mixed reactions to Elemental, and people are having a mostly positive reception towards Inside Out 2, but given the reputation of Disney and Pixar lately, they're cautiously optimistic. All I can say is Inside Out 2 is showing a lot of promise, there's a lot of potential, and once again, this is going to be a coming-of-age story, except this time this is going to delve into Riley's teenage years. No doubt there'll be some drama, and I suppose, come to think of it, I usually find tropes centered around high school to be particularly cringeworthy because high school settings tend to personify all the worst tropes of storytelling that there could possibly be. As in the ones that are constantly used and reused, the ones that people just get sick and tired after a while. You know the ones I'm talking about, like the love triangle, the romance, the sort of peer pressure story, the underdog story. I mean, these kind of stories can be done well, but if you watch enough of them, you just get to a point where you think, the high school tropes again? I mean, it's not that there's no chance of like subverting them or playing around with them or even just downright making fun of them at certain points like some films have. It's just that I mean, of course, there is potential to delve into legit drama. I mean, Inside Out earned the reputation that it did because it took its approach to emotional well-being very seriously, even with the occasional humorous scenes that it did have. There is a lot of potential for humor here. I think if the humor borders on self-deprecating, I think the high school sequences will be more tolerable because there's an element of self-awareness of, yeah, we went through these phases at school, yeah, we felt this way, and so did you, and so will the rest of you growing up through high school. And plus, with what we're presented so far, I think this is going to strike that balance between comedy and drama, a drama comedy, as it were. This might even be more comedic in some ways, but I guess we'll wait and see. I suppose I am cautiously optimistic, but because I actually wanted a sequel for Inside Out, because of the amount of ideas that could be explored to help people raise awareness of mental well-being, I think this film, if handled right, could actually work. So what do you think about the initial teaser trailer of Inside Out 2? Do you think this film can work? What potential do you think this film can have? Let me know down in the comments below, and we could have entire elaborate discussions about what could play out in Inside Out 2. But hey ho, at the end of the day, we'll just have to watch the film and see, eh? At best, maybe our comments could, like, give some productive advice for Inside Out 3, I don't know. Scott's Thinker, signing out. Of any emotion. Pardon me, I shall edit out the farting. I shall keep that as a blooper. I'm just being polite.